My name is Tabbin Almond. I'm an alcohol freedom coach, a podcaster, and author of a book, and I'm going to be sharing my story with you today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got a guest who's been on quite a journey. I mean, from the high-octane, champagne-fueled world of the 1980s advertising to a moment that would actually change everything she thought she knew about alcohol and herself. And obviously, I'd like to welcome Tabbin Almond to the show today. Tabbin, how are you doing today?
Really good. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
The pleasure is all mine. I can't wait to hear your journey and obviously what you've been up to and how you're now helping others be, do, and have happier existence. Now, for those that are just tuning in, obviously, we did start off with the high-octane champagne-fueled world of the 1980s. But these days, Tabbin isn't hosting long, boozy lunches. She's actually hosting life-changing conversations as an alcohol freedom coach, speaker, podcaster, and author. And her Amazon bestseller, Bottling Up Trouble, doesn't just pull the cork off the myths about alcohol. It actually smashes the bottle entirely. And yes, it is also up for the Business Book of the Year in 2025. Congratulations are in order there, Tabbin.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been exciting.
Absolutely. We'll hear all about that as we go along. So if you're watching this or listening to this right now, and if you've ever wondered whether alcohol could maybe silently sabotaging your health, your happiness, or even your business, you're in the right place, because here on the Online Prosperity Show, as you know, this is the #1 place to get exclusive insights on how to break free, reclaim control, and design a life that feels even better than that first glass on a Friday afternoon ever will or ever should. Plus, there's a fun fact here. We're going to be talking about how Tabbin once danced in an aisle of a church with Archbishop Desmond Tutu. I don't know if she was also wearing a tutu or what was going on there, but apparently there's a story. There's a story behind there, and I'm not making this up. So you might be wondering what happens when the party stops and life gets real. I encourage you to stay tuned. And while you're listening, I want you to drop it in the comments there if you have ever had to give up one habit forever. What was it? Just type it in the comments there, and let's see if you're brave enough to say it out loud. Now, Tabbin, as you can see, I'm already mincing my words, and maybe I might end up saying things I'm not even qualified to talk about. Take us back. I mean, obviously in the 1980s, advertising, the scene, from what I hear, just really sounds like, the M.E.D.I.A, the TV show there.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it really like? What was it
Yeah.
really like? And how much of that really shaped your relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I was already, I describe myself as an enthusiastic social drinker before I went into advertising. I grew up in a family where kind of every adult drank alcohol. It was like just what people did. And there were some kind of problem drinkers in the family. I don't like the word alcoholic, but, other people might use that term. I went off to university, and, there was quite a lot of booze at university. Ironically, I spent a year in Cognac in France, which probably didn't help any. And then I started working in advertising, which was really, I thought I'd sort of died and gone to heaven almost, because it was really sociable. I loved the work, and we were being paid to go out and get drunk, basically. Um, I worked in the media department, so I was responsible for planning and buying where a client's advertising would appear. So part of the deal was to have very good relationships with the media owners, the reps from the papers and the radio stations, etc. So I could be out, 5 days a week at lunchtime having. We did eat as well, but it was a kind of quite liquid lunch. We'd often start off with gin and tonics and then have wine, and particularly if it was a Thursday or Friday, port or whatever afterwards, and then go back to work. And it was kind of an unwritten rule that if you'd had a very long lunch, you did something else. You didn't actually spend clients' money during the afternoon, but it was still. I mean, it functioned, and at the time we all thought it was great. I certainly did. And then, of course, you'd go out in the evening with your mates, and weekends were for partying. So there were probably, looking back on it, very few days where I didn't drink alcohol at all, and I had no, I just everybody who I mixed with kind of was in that same mental space, or so it seemed to me at the time. And it just gradually dawned on me that maybe this wasn't so healthy, and that maybe I was drinking a bit differently to other people. Um, and I got married, had two children, and had no problem at all being alcohol free when I was pregnant. So I kind of persuaded myself that maybe I didn't have a problem, that it was okay. But it wasn't. And then we moved from London down to Devon, which is where I come from. And my husband was working away a lot. His job meant that he was abroad for 2, 3 weeks at a time. And the lifestyle was quite different. I was at home with the children. I was doing work predominantly from home. And so, although I loved Devon and had lots of friends, it was very different in terms of the number of people I saw each day. It wasn't like going into an office, a big office in London. Um, and then I would, get the children into bed in the evening and just have a glass of wine or two or three, just to sort of, mark the end of the day kind of thing. And I realised I was finding it very hard not to do that. So then I started thinking, I want to do something about this, and enter what I think of as the floundering years.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us through that. Now, you did paint a picture of, your upbringing having, those sort of influences and things of that nature, which would have, because at that sort of age, kids are just sponges and you wouldn't have known
Yes.
any sort of better and things like that.
No.
Was the alcohol just staying within the confines of them functioning, or did it also have any adverse effects around at that time?
I think looking back, it did have an adverse effect, because when somebody is drinking, when a parent is drinking, and my parents weren't, there was no violence, there was no abuse, nothing like that. But there was, I think, a lack of emotional availability, if you like.
Right.
And I think, I mean, I'm in my 60s, so my parents were obviously 20, 30 years older than that. And they were of a generation where emotions weren't really discussed that much anyway. And when you compound that with alcohol, which kind of deadens people's sensitivities, I think the net effect was that I became somebody who just didn't express emotion. I
Yeah.
learned to suppress it all because it didn't always go down well, because the reactions could be a little bit off if somebody's been drinking anyway. So, and that's all very much with the benefit of hindsight. And I'm not blaming them
Yeah.
for it. It's just, and that's very common, and it's very common in families now. There will be children growing up, today, where a parent is drinking and they just feel, oh, I won't raise that with mum tonight. She doesn't seem like she's in a listening mood. They may not even attribute it to alcohol, but
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And thank you so much for going there with us, because even these days, it might not be alcohol, it might be the mobile phone. I've had
Oh,
and read
absolutely.
studies
Yes.
where kids
Yes.
are just looking and mimicking what the adults around them are doing, and
Mm,
now looking at it as a coping mechanism. And
yeah.
just in that sort of reference, I just wanted to sort of maybe put that across to you as well, that maybe as kids, you're impressionable, and that would have just
Yes.
been like, maybe this is how life is lived.
Yeah. And I genuinely, I mean, I don't think I knew any adults who
Mhm.
didn't drink alcohol.
Right.
So as I grew up, I associated alcohol with being adult and being kind of sophisticated, which is ironic because obviously when we're drunk we're anything but sophisticated. But that's what I had the association. I can remember once being in a flat that I just leased for a while, um, and I bought a bottle of wine and I bought some wine glasses. It wasn't furnished, or I didn't have any. And I thought, oh, this is grown up. Get me. Drinking my wine from a posh glass. Wasn't so posh when I drank the whole bottle of it, but that there was that association. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. And
Mm.
that's the same as well with smoking, where kids
Yeah,
look up to older people that
absolutely.
seemingly are doing well, and they then attribute that particular substance to,
Mm.
if I do X, then that means I would be Y. So I just wanted to
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
add that sort
And
of.
and you're so right on mobile phones as well. Very young children want mobile phones and they mimic
Yeah,
the way their parents they pick up a parent's phone and they sort of pretend that they are their mum or dad. And so that it's a natural thing to mimic the adults. Yeah.
absolutely. But you didn't help yourself by moving to cognac, right? I would think everything.
That was just, I mean, I thought it was brilliant at the time. And it's a really lovely little town if anybody wants to visit it, but it's maybe not the best place for somebody who's developing a problem with alcohol.
I mean, the name in and of itself just says, you
Exactly.
know
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
I'll have the town's name and things of that
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah.
So when you obviously would have been going through your go throughs, and also, I really commend you. Like you did mention with the kids, you didn't partake. I've seen parents that have, and they would have, yeah, not had the best outcome with their kids. But you say that your drinking sort of shifted from being the social drink with everybody else at work and everything, and it became solitary. And
Yeah.
obviously this is where some sort of red flags would have started showing up. Maybe can you describe that turning point when you realized that this wasn't part of the job anymore?
Yeah, it was a gradual thing, I think, because it's quite a big lifestyle change to move from working in an advertising agency in London to living in a very remote place in Devon, even if it was my sort of home, as it were, and working from home. And so everything was different. But I think that the main thing that was, so there were two things. One, my drinking had been predominantly social in that it was either at work or through work or, with my husband in the evenings, which seemed kind of okay. But when we were down in Devon and I was home alone a lot in the evenings, it seemed to be to me that I was sort of like crossing a line to be drinking on my own and to be looking forward to that during the course of the day. And it had switched. One of the things that was a little bit of a red flag to me was that I would be preoccupied with making sure there was enough booze in the house, which hadn't really been too much of an issue before. But you when you live in rural Devon, you can't just pop out to the shop, and you can't if you've got two small children asleep in the house anyway. So I would kind of make sure there was enough wine. And then when my husband was home, he he predominantly drank red wine, I predominantly drank white wine. But I can remember having some of his red, well, maybe while I was cooking, and also drinking my white wine, so that it was a way of kind of hiding the amount that I was drinking. Now, he never said anything. He wouldn't, he wasn't judging me in any way, but I was trying to play games with myself. Yeah.
Mm. You see, when most people think alcohol problem, they're already thinking brown bag, you know,
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
it in hiding, and maybe there's a couple of nights or days where the shower hasn't been turned on and things like that,
Yeah, absolutely. I
some
know what you mean.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
rock bottom moments. But in your case, it was
Yeah,
sitting.
I didn't. Yeah, there wasn't really a rock bottom moment like that.
Hmm.
Um, there are a couple of ways that people describe the type of drinker that I was. There's a lady called Jolene Park, and she talks about grey area drinkers. And there's another guy called Andy Ramage who refers to us as middle lane drinkers. We just kind of hog the middle lane on the motorway and we won't move over, which is quite a good description. Um, the I think that I knew because of people I could see in my life that if you have a degree of alcohol use disorder, to give it its proper name, in your 30s, you'll have more of one in your 40s, more severe in your 50s, and you'll be in real trouble by your 60s, kind of thing. That it's progressive. And I knew that. I had witnessed that and seen that. So that was one factor. And the other was I just had this innate feeling of kind of, why wait for a spectacular rock bottom? Why mess things up really badly? If you know this isn't doing you any good and you do, then do something about it sooner rather than later. So it was, and it was there was it's kind of hard to disentangle that because I now know so much more than I did then about the physical, mental, and emotional harms caused by alcohol. But I had this innate feeling that I just needed to get off that runaway train, as it were.
Mm. And obviously, on your journey to want to get back on track, you would have tried the AA hypnotherapy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then went on and discovered something that worked. Maybe can you walk us through how you went about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I started off like most people do with AA because for the vast majority of people, that's all they've ever heard of. If somebody's got a problem with alcohol or is an alcoholic, whatever that it means, you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I tried that, and I did it for about 2 years. It and you have different meetings, so I would do a Thursday lunchtime or whatever in one place, and then but and I tried three different kind of setups, three different meetings, not one-off meetings. I would go regularly to them. And wherever I went, and whichever meeting it was, I got the feeling that I wasn't yet bad enough to be there. Um, and this may have been my fault, not them. I'm not blaming the people the other attendees at all, but I felt that I hadn't had enough of a rock bottom to really belong in those rooms. So that was the first thing. I didn't feel a kind of kindred spirit type thing. The other thing with AA was you identify as an alcoholic. I mean that sort of thing of, hello, my name is Tabbin, I'm an alcoholic. That's what happens. And I had a problem identifying as an alcoholic, partly because of the brown paper bag park bench thing that you're describing, but also I'm I'm a I did a lot of research in advertising. I was the sort of strategist, and I just didn't really know what an alcoholic was. There's no definition of an alcoholic. It's not you drink X units or you have this number of blackouts or anything. So it wasn't very quantifiable. And it was all quite vague. And in the eyes of the beholder, as it were. And that felt uncomfortable to me. Um, and the other thing that I had an issue with was the sort of it was very negative. It was all about just don't do it, don't do it, don't. Um, and I was looking for something just a bit more optimistic. I was doing this because I felt like my life could be a lot better. And this was just all about you're always an alcoholic. You're only one drink away from disaster and that sort of thing. So it didn't fit. I just, and I know millions of people have been saved by AA. So I'm not saying don't try it, but it doesn't suit everybody. Um, I then read, I was doing a lot of reading by that stage. This is in the sort of early 2000s. And I read a book by Alan Carr, which is called The Easy Way to Control Alcohol. And the title was great. It was easy and it put me back in control. And I liked the idea of that. At that stage, I think my goal was probably to moderate rather than to quit, thinking back. But anyway, I read the book. It made a lot of sense. And then I followed up by going for a 1 day hypnotherapy session at the Alan Carr Clinic in London. Um, and we talked about alcohol. I learned quite a lot, reinforced what I'd learned from the book. And then you have a sort of hypnotherapy session at the end of the day. And that was it. I was absolutely fine. Didn't think about alcohol, didn't feel deprived, just yeah, you do you, I'll do me. I don't drink these days. And I was so what I had done through the hypnotherapy, I now can understand, is that I had paid this guy to rewire my subconscious for me. So that when those moments where I would previously have drunk came up, my subconscious said, "Oh, yeah, we used to do that, but we don't do that anymore. Do something different." And it was really effective until, and it lasted for 7.5 years or so. Um, and I honestly thought, that's it, I'm done. Um, uh, and then I went through all sorts of challenges. Our marriage broke up. I had very severe financial problems. And 3 months after my husband had left and he was the other side of the world, 3 months after that, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I kind of diagnosed myself actually, which is another story. But and even all through that, I didn't think about drinking. But there was a crunch moment, which was when after the initial surgery, during the initial surgery, they had tested 7 lymph nodes to see whether the cancer had spread. And about 2 weeks after that initial surgery, I went back to the hospital to get, just to be checked over and to get the results of those tests. And the surgeon sat me down and said, "Well, the surgery went well. However, we've got the results back and we tested 7 lymph nodes and the cancer was in all 7 and in a high count." And everything then became a bit of a blur of fear, really. Um, and, the takeout for me was we need to find out where this has spread to. I don't know if that's what she said or not, but that's what I heard. And I was terrified. I wasn't so frightened of dying myself, but I was really, really worried for my children. That was my big focus. That their father was mentally not in a good place and he was the other side of the world and he was not at that stage, and where he was in his life, he wasn't really very well equipped to cope with what was going on. And if I'd died, they were, it was going to be, a big deal for them. And that was the frightening thing for me, I think. So when I was with my daughter, who was 21 then, and my brother, during that sort of hospital appointment, And when we got home, they opened a bottle of wine, which was completely normal for them. And I can remember just thinking, I'm having some of that. And I must have drunk at least a bottle of wine that night. Um, and it was a desire to not be in my own head. Um, and um, it was effective. I don't remember going to bed that night. I obviously did manage to, but and I just um, I gave alcohol the job of numbing fear and pain. Uh, but it was like the genie was out of the bottle. Um, I didn't start drinking in my old way straight away because I was back in hospital for more tests and for more surgery and then chemo and then radiotherapy. So for the first few months after that incident, I really didn't drink very much at all. But once I was better, I got back into my old habits. Um, but this time it was a bit different because there was quite a lot of shame attached to it because I'd had that 7.5 years of not drinking. And so everybody around me thought I didn't drink anymore. So if I did drink in company, with people, maybe out for a meal or something like that, I would keep it very moderate, just one glass, and I would drive and that sort of thing. But then when I got home, I'd have a bottle of wine. Um, and so it was very solitary. By this stage, my children were older, and my daughter was at university. So was my son actually by that stage. So during when they were away at uni, I was at home on my own, and so it's very easy. Um, and it just started to ramp up again. And it wasn't huge. We're not talking sort of, a bottle of vodka a day or anything like that. It was a bottle of wine, maybe a bit more, but it was really regular and it was in my head all the time, if that makes sense. Um, and it's that mental preoccupation and, thinking about drinking and waking up in the morning saying, oh, I can't believe I did that again. I hate myself. I'm not going to do that again. Feeling groggy and hungover, but able to go to work. Not being that productive when I got there, I'm sure. And then by mid-afternoon, this sort of mental battle of I'm not going to get wine on the way home. And then I would, and rinse and repeat. Um, and so that carried on for about 3 years. And I was reading things, and, one day, anyway, I Googled, am I an alcoholic? I think that's what it was. It would have been something like that. And of course, if you do that, you kind of know the answer. You might not like the word alcoholic, but have I got a problem with alcohol? And I came across an organisation called This Naked Mind, and that's also the name of a book written by a lady called Annie Grace. And I got the book and kept getting emails from This Naked Mind. It's an American, Annie's American, and the organisation is American, and they're very kind of persistent with their emails. And of course, I could have unsubscribed at any point, but some little wise cell in my brain said, don't, you actually need this. So eventually, one morning, particularly hungover, I thought, right, I'm doing it. And I signed up for a course, a 3-month course, which was actually the coach was Annie Grace herself. She now has trained up some coaches like me, so she doesn't coach directly on a course anymore. She's too busy writing books. But at that time, she was coaching. She was my coach, and it worked so quickly. The book had really, really made sense to me, and it was the first time I read the very different perspective, which is this is not your fault. You are not a defective human being. This substance is addictive to anybody who drinks enough of it and whose mindset is such that they come to rely on it to do a job. And that was me. And to realize it wasn't my fault, and it takes quite a lot of work to actually stop feeling ashamed, a lot of work, but to know that this, you don't need to feel ashamed. You haven't done anything wrong. Um, that was huge for me. So that was the first thing. And then during the course of the course, that's not very good English, but during the course, um, I learned something that was the game changer for me personally, which was that alcohol causes cancer. And I literally had not known that, even though I'd had breast cancer, which is one of the cancers that is known to be caused by alcohol. There are obviously other causes, but it's definitely scientifically proven that alcohol is one of the causes of breast cancer. Hadn't known that. And that blew my mind. And the fact that when I was discharged by the hospital, or sort of, finished my treatment, and they said, right, you're good to go, you're cancer free. And I can remember saying to the oncologist, so what do I need to do to stay cancer free? And the advice was sort of, oh, just, lead a healthy lifestyle, eat healthily, take good amount of exercise, look after yourself. No mention of alcohol. And I've since sort of challenged that oncologist and said, look, I asked that question, you didn't tell me. But then that has been known since 1988. It's been on the World Health Organization's website. So as a doctor, you obviously knew that. If you didn't, but she did. She knew that. But the perspective is we don't want to shame patients. We don't want them to think this is their fault. And I said, but you wouldn't do that with smoking, would you? You remind people, if somebody's discharged from hospital after being treated for lung cancer, if they survive it, they will be reminded that smoking is not a good idea. But this information just isn't out there about alcohol. So that's something that was a real aha moment for me when I discovered that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for taking us through all of that, because I think it really paints a picture, with the two different organizations that you're talking about, with the AA explicitly going in to say you're at fault, whereas
Mm.
with Annie Grace, she was giving that grace and permission to have an understanding that this would happen because of the way this product is created. So now that you will know how to do better. Whereas
Yeah,
if you're
absolutely.
already pointing a finger at yourself, there's no
Mm.
recourse from that. You're already saying I'm to blame, so I'm gonna need to fix this. But if you don't have the tools or understanding of how to fix it,
Spot on.
then that will
Spot
be
on.
something
Yeah.
else. Now I understand why you are big on self-compassion over
Mm.
shame, because as you have said, the oncologist is already, without shaming you, already shaming you by not
Mm.
telling you because they
Yeah.
think they're making a decision on your part. Why do you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
shame is such a powerful trap for people trying to change their habits?
Um, I think the thing with shame is that when you dig down into what shame is, it's a fear of being found out, and of being that if somebody finds out whatever it is you're ashamed of or about, that you will be excluded. So it plays to a very really basic need in human beings, which is to belong. And that's where shame can be so corrosive, because you think, and so you become very preoccupied with people not finding out. And if it's something that you really have no reason to feel shame for, then freeing yourself from that is the biggest gift you can give yourself, really, because there is nothing to be ashamed of. Having a problem with alcohol does not is not because you are a bad person, and it doesn't make you a bad person. But societally, there is a huge amount of stigma attached to having a problem with alcohol.
Mm.
Um, and it's really weird because society encourages us to drink, virtually everywhere we go, have a drink, come in. Oh, it's your birthday, champagne. Yeah. And it's, yeah. And so we're encouraged to drink it and certainly encouraged to drink in the workplace. And then if you go on to develop a problem with it, suddenly you're stigmatized and shunned and, shown the door. And that is an issue for me. That's what I'd love to change. And that's why I'm really happy always to do things like this and to talk about it because, if one person watches this and thinks, oh, that's me, wow, I don't need to feel ashamed. This isn't my fault. I can get some help. And then, you know, there's nothing wrong with me, inherently wrong with me. I'm perfectly fine in the essence of me. This is just something I've become addicted to, but I can change that. It doesn't define me. Then that's why I do it. The more people, the more of us that kind of inverted commas come out and say, yeah, I used to have a problem with alcohol, but I don't anymore. And my life is so much better without it. The more, yeah, we can change things. It's beginning to happen, but only beginning.
Absolutely. And you've gone on and set up wine to water coaching. I really love that
Mm.
play on words.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And obviously, but it meant you were living safe. It meant you were exposing yourself. It meant the shame would have to take a back bench because now you're going to have to retell your story again and again in order to earn trust with the people that you're working with. Were there
Yeah.
any fears that would have maybe kept you up at night that am I gonna really gonna do this or things of that nature?
It was, you're certainly making yourself vulnerable when you do this. But there is a reason for doing it, and sort of it has a purpose and one I believe in. So yes, there is vulnerability. I'm sure there have been unpleasant things said behind my back. Let them. It doesn't I can't control what other people say and do and think anyway. So, but I believe in what I'm doing, and I believe it is right to share my story. Um, and I sometimes sort of think, oh, it's not a very spectacular story. It was just like a miserable middle class, middle lane drinker getting into problems and not being very happy. But actually, that is precisely why I should tell my story, because there are millions of people just like me. And when I talk about being just fed up of thinking about drinking, people say, "Oh yeah, me too. I totally get that." So you don't have to hit rock bottom and have a dreadful car accident or really, really lose your job and make a dreadful mess of things to think, yeah, alcohol's not doing me any favors here. So yeah, that's why I
Absolutely.
do it. Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously, I'll just maybe play devil's advocate here for a little bit, Tabbin.
Mm,
We did establish everything really is cheers, mate. Hey, let's go out and have a few bevies. You know what I mean? Some countries, some places are well known based on the alcohol they produce. Like cognac, there's a Champagne
mm,
region, wine country, you know what I mean? And even Australia is known for a beer we don't even
mm,
have on tap, Foster's.
mm.
It's quite funny. But a lot of people might think going alcohol free means a boring, joyless life. You don't want to be that
Mm.
person that people don't call because, yeah, her. What's the biggest myth about sobriety that you would love to debunk for us?
Um, I think there are two. One would be that alcohol relieves stress. It doesn't. It
Mm.
actually makes it worse. When we drink alcohol, the chemical reaction in the body means that we it triggers the adrenal gland, so we release more adrenaline and cortisol. So that's the first one. It can never relieve stress beyond the first 20 to 30 minutes of buzz, and then the chemical reactions start. And yeah, so it's not a stress reliever. So anxiety or boozanoia, they are for real. um, and the second one is that it's how we have fun. We often have fun when alcohol is involved, but we're having fun because we're with people we like and we're doing stuff we enjoy. It's not the alcohol that's making things fun. And it deadens all of our senses. So it deadens our ability to actually experience real joy as well. Um, so those would be the two myths, I think.
Mm. And with the work that you're doing, you're now helping people maybe spot the hidden ways that alcohol actually affects maybe their life or their business. What's one sort of surprising symptom that most leaders completely miss because fish don't see the water that they swim in?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah. Um, I think that the thing that most business leaders are unaware of is the connection between alcohol and mental health. Alcohol contributes to depression, stress, and anxiety, and they are the three most common mental health problems. So employers will have people who are absent from work, off sick with mental health problems, not realizing that alcohol may well be contributing to those mental health problems. So those people are being treated for stress, but not for the underlying cause, for at least some of them, which would be alcohol. Added to that, there is absenteeism where people are just too hungover to go to work, but the same shame and stigma that attaches to having an issue with alcohol means that they effectively lie and say they're off sick because they're taking the dog to the vet or whatever. So there's a lot of yeah, untruths being told because people can't actually feel they can't give the real reason because the help isn't available if they do. And that's really, the point of my book um, is to highlight the cost to business of alcohol and how educating people about the risks and helping people who are already in trouble with alcohol is a good business decision and ultimately leading to some culture change within organizations.
Absolutely. And this is bottling up trouble we're talking about. Could you let
Correct.
us
Yeah.
know where
Yeah.
people can get a copy of this book? And also, maybe if somebody's watching this right now, tab in where they can maybe go to on the internet to find more information about maybe working with you or how you can possibly help them.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, Bottling Up Trouble is in some bookshops if they have a big business section, but available on Amazon all around the world, anywhere where Amazon exists. Um, and it was an Amazon bestseller when it was launched just under a year ago, which was exciting. And it is now it's been shortlisted for the Business Book of the Year awards, which is really cool. Not something that I expected for something that's a passion project. And obviously, my publisher saw something in it, but for the wider business press to say, yeah, this is an important book, that's been really, really valuable to me. And so I coach, I work with businesses to change things within organizations, but I also coach people one on one. And that's all of that you can find on my website, which is winetowatercoaching.com. And so I talk there about the one-on-one coaching, working with businesses, and the sort of connection with the book. And also I have a weekly podcast where I just it's called The Alcohol Debate, and it's debating myths and facts and also a little bit of policy worldwide around alcohol. So at the moment we're looking quite a lot of detail in the whole issue of health warnings on alcohol labelling and that sort of thing. So that's what I do. always open to a chat. And I offer free discovery calls to people if they just want to find out more about working with me.
Yeah, I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes
Lovely.
below.
Thank you. Thank you.
And yeah, people can sort of join in and see if this is something that works for them. But I mean, somebody might be, looking at this and thinking, "Ah, I'm all right. It's not that bad. I'm functioning. People around me are okay." And work actually expects me to get these high accounts, so that we can get the advertising going. What would you say
Mm.
to somebody like that?
Um, I think now you just don't, if you don't want to drink but are feeling under any pressure to do so, the the availability of really good non-alcoholic drinks. You don't just have to drink a cola anymore. And I think that there isn't so much knowledge now about alcohol that you're perfectly fine to say, look, I'm off the booze for the moment, but don't let me stop you. Can I get, what would you like to drink? And you can just have, I'll have an alcohol free whatever. um, if somebody pressurizes somebody into drinking alcohol, that is on them, always on them. Uh, and it's wrong for people to be made to feel that they have to drink. um, if anybody comes up under that sort of pressure, what I always say to people is my response is, I don't drink these days because I find I'm so much happier without it. Because then if
Mm.
somebody tries to pressurize you to drink when you've already told them that, they're basically saying, I don't care about your happiness, I want you to keep me
I want
company.
you
And most
to
people aren't going to do that.
no.
Yeah.
No, Tabbin, I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, maybe ever since you became a coach and you started facilitating these things, you probably really stumbled into a lot of money and a lot of security guards and bodyguards and a lot of protection out there, because what you're tackling is a big industry that has deeper and bigger pockets that will do whatever they can to make sure messages like this never see the light of day.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it quite like that. I mean, I know, having worked in advertising, I know that the alcohol industry has deep pockets. I don't think they would demonize somebody like me, because I'm not saying alcohol is bad. I'm just helping people who get into trouble with it. I'm never going to say it's wrong to drink, but for those who have found it's not helping them, but actually, the alcohol companies, they're not stupid. They can see the way the tide is turning. So they are making some really good non-alcoholic drinks as well. So yeah, I don't think I'm putting my life at risk. I hope I'm not. If I am, it's in a good cause.
Fantastic. That Tavin, I can't
Yeah.
thank you enough for the time that we spend on the call today. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for a lot of people that are
I
just
hope so.
wandering out there and don't quite
Mm,
know that this actually is not their fault. Like we have established, there are
mm.
people in industries that are hell bent to make sure that information like this doesn't reach those people, and they would rather it stays like that. So thank you so much for
Oh,
championing.
yes. Yeah. Oh, it's a great pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for helping me air the story. Okay.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are watching, obviously, Tabbin's story really proves one thing: you can rewrite your relationship with alcohol without shame, without losing joy, and without waiting for that rock bottom moment to force a change. So, if today's conversation really made you pause, maybe it's time to ask yourself, what's been holding you back from the life and maybe the work that you actually deserve? And it could just be, that next drink that you can't wait to get onto when you get back home. So I also encourage you to share this episode with anyone who might be struggling in silence. It might just be that
Yeah.
nudge that they need. And obviously, if somebody has shared this episode with you, I encourage you to just give them a hug the next time you see them, because these are the kind of people that are looking out for you and affording
Yeah.
you information like this. And while you're at it, subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show so that you do not miss out on any of this valuable conversations. And from what I hear, the next episode, we're going to be explaining and exploring ideas that can help you live a happier, healthier existence. Until then, I want you to remember one thing: the best conversations aren't just listened to, they're shared. This is what you want to do with this episode. Bye for now.